This is the My Inner Therapist podcast, and I'm your host, Nikole Seals. Join me in growing a community where we can privately share our stories and collaborate on ways to restore respect and value to the work we do. We can stay connected when you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch the video versions of the show. Be sure to visit myinnertherapist.com to learn more about my private consultations, audio programs, and courses, along with all of the free advice and tips that I dish out at my Learning Hub. That's where I let it all hang out, and I encourage you to join me by sharing your comments on posts and videos. You can also connect with me on my LinkedIn page and my Facebook page at My Inner Therapist. Now, if that feels like you're doing too much, simply click on the link in the show's description or visit myinnertherapist.com and sign up for my newsletter. It'll arrive once, maybe twice a month, with goodies like discount codes, invitation to live Q&As, and links to everything I just mentioned. All right, it's enough with the intro. Let the session begin. Hi all, thank you for joining me. This is a topic that hits close to home for me. And if you are listening, I imagine that you have a little experience with it as well. We're going to be talking about self-sacrificing and the cost of caring for others. Now, this is especially true for people who work in the helping profession. If you are listening in as a social worker, if you're listening in as a nurse, if you are listening in as someone who works with special needs children, if you're in the helping professions, then I know that you can relate to this topic. And even if you're not, say you are part of a family where you're the social worker to your family, right? I know some of you can relate to that. I know I can relate to that. And it becomes a very habit-forming way of navigating our relationships. And as a result, we end up feeling neglected and burnt out, exhausted, like there's nothing left over for ourselves. And it becomes frustrating when you feel like your own needs aren't getting met. And that can often result in resentment. It can result in self-soothing in other ways, whether it's through food or medication or alcohol and substances. So it's really important that we talk about self-sacrifice and why it is something that we continue to do, even though it can be quite damaging to the self, and how we can, what you do once you identify that you're stuck in that mode of self-sacrifice, what you can actually do to start to pull yourself out of it. And so I think what's really important is that we first start off by talking about how self-sacrifice shows up in our lives. And when it's through your work, it becomes even more powerful because it is so tied in to our needs getting met, especially when it comes to our financial needs. So if we have a job where our job is to go in and provide service and support to people in need, we can get emotional fulfillment out of knowing that we're doing good work, but at the same time, it's fulfilling our financial need, it's fulfilling our need to have a job, to be a provider for our family. So the more needs that type of work meets, the more we become dependent on it, the more we become connected to it, the stronger habit of thought we have attached to it, our belief systems around it become very empowered. So that's why sometimes it can feel like you're stuck in the cycle of, I'm so drained. I'm so tired of people depending on me and calling on me to help them and having to always show up for everyone and feeling like my needs don't get met. When I need something, no one's there for you. And then going to bed and waking up the next day and doing it all over again because it's so hard to pull ourselves out of it, especially when we're not even aware that it's happening. And self-sacrifice in the workspace, in our work lives, we we get feedback from others that also confirms that it's worth it, that that sacrifice is worth it. So you have people who are like, oh, the work that you do is so amazing. And, you've really helped so many people, right? So it's very affirming. And it's hard to see how something that affirms what you have to offer can also be so damaging. And that's why it can feel as if it's worth it. Like it's worth me putting my needs aside for other people because I am getting these affirmations. I'm getting my other needs met, where it comes to my bills getting paid and I'm able to take care of my family. And we tend to separate that from our emotional wellness needs and our spiritual needs. And it's in those moments that we really have to stop, push the pause button, and practice some self-awareness and assess what the risk is. Because I'm not saying that you should not be selfless, that you should not go out and do good work, that you should not help people. What I am saying is that if you are doing it to the point that certain needs of your own are not being met and it is starting to truly impact your life, it is starting to truly impact how you feel about yourself, it is starting to affect your physical health, it is starting to affect your outlook on life. If that begins to happen, then those are strong indicators that the amount of attention and energy and support that you're giving to other people is not in balance with what you're giving to yourself. And we talk so much about self-care. So that's when people talk about self-care, it shows up in what you need to re-energize and what you need to heal and what you need to stay motivated. That's self-care. That's what we have to practice, where we're constantly reminding ourselves of our own value. And we are also taking inventory of what's going on with us emotionally and physically. That's what practicing self-care is. And self-care is typically the thing that gets put on the back burner when you're stuck in that mode of self-sacrifice. Because we also establish a lot of dependent relationships with people where they expect us to show up. They expect us to put our needs aside and focus on theirs. And I will be 100% transparent and just keep it real that I have been stuck in that mode for some time, where it's just very natural and normal. Sometimes I don't even think about it, that I will put my needs aside for the people around me. And so much of it comes from a couple of different places. One of them being that I don't like to see other people struggle and hurt or be in pain. Oftentimes I feel it with an intensity that it becomes like their discomfort becomes my discomfort and their pain becomes my pain. It's it's a deep empathy. There's this empathic relationship that I often have with people's pain and hurt. And while that serves me in being able to work with people, at times I take it on and it becomes my own. So I've had to do a lot of work around that and recognizing that that's happening, because often what ends up going on in my head is that, okay, if I can just help them, if I can make things better for them, if I can make them feel better, if I can get them back on track, then what I'm feeling will stop and it will go away and I won't feel it anymore. And I think that that's true for a lot of us in the helping profession. I think we feel deeply, which is why we do the work that we do, and we can connect with people. And at the same time, we can feel it so much that we also want to relieve ourselves of it. We want to ease other people's suffering, which has also become our suffering. So there's that piece to it, but then there's also really the side that we don't always want to acknowledge, which is that there's a need being met when we self-sacrifice. We get something from that it makes us feel good. I feel good when I can show up for people. I feel good when I can help someone. When they are dealing with something, whether it's emotional or they've just got they just want some advice, I'm your girl, right? I love being able to help people as they try to discover what is it about their current behavior or their current circumstances that needs to change, and how you go about that change. And if I can be whether it's a mirror, if I can be just emotionally supportive, if I can, just walk with them on that journey and maybe just sit with them in that place, I get something out of that. That feels good to me. I like being able to offer that to people. But without a boundary in place, that can become consuming. It can set expectations. I can become codependent. So boundaries then become the tool that allows us to prevent self-sacrifice to the point of our own neglect, right? Our own self-neglect. And so in order to stop self-sacrificing, you have to be able to recognize how often it's happening, with whom with whom you are engaged in those type of kind of codependent relationships. You also need to be able to really kind of self-evaluate your beliefs about the sacrifice. And I say that because much of my motive in serving other people and making sure that their needs were met before having my own needs met was because that was taught to me. That is, I would say that was very much tied into my cultural conditioning, right? What the belief systems that were really passed down to me, the ones that I inherited as a child about how a young girl of color needs to navigate in her family dynamic. And I was taught that other people's needs were more important than my own, that I need to be there for other people. And that was deeply ingrained in my psyche. And there were, for so many years, I was completely unaware of it. So you do have to do a bit of an assessment and really be able to identify the beliefs that support it, the behaviors that support it, and the absence of boundaries. Why is this happening to the point that I'm to my own detriment? And then you have to be able to decide, are the benefits of what I'm doing, do they outweigh what my own life can be if I were to get my needs met, if I were to take care of myself, if I were to practice self-care? Because this is a choice that you get to make. I'm not saying that you need to stop self-sacrificing. If that's working for you, do you. If it's to the point that it's become harmful and you feel like you're neglected and you're tired and you're burnt out and you don't have a life of your own, you feel resentful, you're angry towards the people that you helped because they didn't show it for you, that's a problem. And you need to be able to decide that I'm going to enforce boundaries and start taking care of myself and get my needs met. And I accept that this may change my relationships, that it may change some of my relationships, that this expectation that's been out there is now changed, and there might be some pushback to that. And I know in working with my clients, that's one of the biggest fears is, how is this going to change my relationships? I've already set this precedence on my job. So now how do I go in and advocate with boundaries and really advocate for that dynamic to be changed with my coworkers or my boss's expectation? And it's possible, but it does require self-love. It requires you being committed to yourself and taking care of your own needs. And we're going to talk about that because this is a weighty topic. And we're going to talk more about that. And we're going to talk with other people who have come from this place of self-sacrificing work for years to this place of discovery that their own interest and their own needs were a way for them to be able to actually give more, while still really protecting the self. And we're going to talk about that in some future episodes as we explore this topic a little bit more, because it is possible. Like I said, the nature of your relationships will change, but they can also change in an amazing way that really can be liberating, and it can open up a whole new world of possibility. And at the same time, it just could be very empowering when you realize what you can achieve by having a focus on self, so that you are fulfilled and you are re-energized and you take the time for your own personal growth and what that means when it comes to being there for other people. Because if you elevate yourself, you can bring that into your new relationships or some of your old relationships. So we will explore that more. And as we start to get into the new year and have guests on, I really want to have guests come on and share their personal experience of really being a giver and how they made a transition to being able to set expectations and boundaries with people who were just on kind of the receiving end and not really showing up for them. So we'll talk more about that, and I hope you'll come back and join us. All right, that's a wrap for today's show. Help our community to grow by rating the show in your app and share it on your social media. Or you can just tell people about it in the break room at work tomorrow. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and remember, you can let your education limit you or liberate you. Choose wisely. Until next time, friends.